You're standing in the produce aisle right now, aren't you? Looking at those perfectly arranged apples. Shiny, uniform, boring. What if I told you that less than 100 years ago, minerals and flavor, that it was called the American custard apple? A fruit Thomas Jefferson cultivated at Monticello. A fruit George Washington loved so much, he'd eat it chilled for dessert. The pawpaw. America's largest native fruit. And you've probably never even heard of it. Here's the kicker. This thing has 3 times the vitamin C of an apple, more potassium than a banana, and tastes like a tropical vacation crashed into a Midwestern forest. It grows naturally in 26 states across the eastern United States. Millions of these trees are out there right now, dropping fruit that nobody picks. So why can't you buy one at Whole Foods? Why isn't there a pawpaw spice latte at Starbucks every fall? And why did America collectively ghost its own native superfruit? Keep watching. The answer is way more interesting than you'd think. Let's start with what this thing actually is. The pawpaw, scientific name Asimina triloba, if you're feeling fancy, is the largest edible fruit indigenous to North America. We're not talking about some tiny berry here. A single pawpaw fruit can weigh up to a pound. That's roughly the size of a mango but shaped more like a stubby kidney bean with an attitude problem. The tree itself grows wild from southern Ontario down to northern Florida, and from the Atlantic coast all the way to eastern Nebraska. That's a massive range. You've probably walked past pawpaw trees 100 times without knowing it. They like river valleys, forest edges, and that weird liminal space between definitely woods and probably someone's backyard. But here's where it gets wild. This fruit doesn't belong here. Not evolutionarily anyway. See, the pawpaw is part of the Ananaceae family. You know what else is in that family? Soursop, cherimoya, sugar apple, all tropical fruits. The pawpaw is the only member of this entire plant family that said screw the tropics and decided to evolve in a place where winter exists. It's the botanical equivalent of someone from Miami moving to Minnesota and thriving. The trees can survive temperatures down to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. They're essentially tropical plants in winter coats. And that weirdness extends to everything about them. The flowers. They smell like rotting meat. Beautiful maroon petals that bloom before the leaves come out. And they smell like something died. Why? Because they're pollinated by flies and beetles. It's creamy. It's smooth. It's the kind of texture that makes people shut up mid-conversation and just experience it. The flavor, though. That's where the pawpaw really shows off. You know how wine people describe wine? Notes of cherry, tints of tobacco, whispers of a leather armchair where Hemingway once sat. The pawpaw is like that. Except it actually tastes like all those things. Mango, banana, pineapple, vanilla custard, cantaloupe. Some people taste bubblegum. Others get melon. A few weirdos swear they taste papaya, which is confusing because pawpaw and papaya are completely different fruits that just happen to have similar names because English is a disaster. One pawpaw can have 10 to 14 large lima bean-sized seeds running through the center. You don't eat those. They're mildly toxic, which is nature's way of saying I'm trying to reproduce here. Stop eating my babies. But the flesh around those seeds, that's where the magic lives. A single pawpaw contains about 80 calories. Compare that to an apple at around 95. But calories are boring. Let's talk about what those calories are made of. Vitamin C? A pawpaw has 3 times more than an apple. You want 18% of your daily recommended intake in one fruit? Potassium. More than a banana. We're talking 345 milligrams per 100 grams of fruit. Your muscles and nerves would like to send the pawpaw a thank you card. Magnesium. Manganese, iron, copper. The pawpaw is basically a multivitamin that tastes like dessert. But wait, there's more. And this is where it gets actually insane. Pawpaws are absolutely loaded with ananaceous acetogen. Try saying that 5 times fast. These are compounds that scientists are currently studying for their potential anti-cancer properties. We're not saying pawpaws cure cancer. Don't be that person. But the research is interesting enough that actual scientists in lab coats are paying attention. The fruit also has more antioxidants than blueberries in some studies. Antioxidants are those things supplement companies won't shut up about. Except in this case they occur naturally, and you get them by eating something that tastes amazing. So we've established that this fruit is nutritionally stacked, tastes incredible, and grows wild across half the country. You'd think America would be obsessed with this thing. You'd think every farmer's market would have pawpaw stands, pawpaw smoothies, pawpaw everything. And actually, there kind of were, for about 10,000 years. Let's rewind. Way back, before grocery stores, before agriculture, before anyone decided Ohio was a good idea. They integrated them into their entire food systems, dried for winter storage and even fermented. Some tribes would mash the pulp and make it into cakes that could be stored for months. Others used the fibrous inner bark to make rope and fishing nets. Archaeological evidence shows pawpaw seeds at Native American sites dating back thousands of years. These weren't accidental. These people were actively managing pawpaw groves, encouraging their growth, probably even cultivating specific trees with better fruit. Then Europeans showed up with their apples and their opinions. Early European settlers and explorers wrote about pawpaws constantly. The Lewis and Clark expedition, they survived on pawpaws for several days when their food supplies ran low in September 1806. Lewis wrote about them. Clark wrote about them. The entire core of discovery was basically subsisting on America's weird tropical forest banana. Thomas Jefferson, foodie extraordinaire, had pawpaw trees at Monticello. He actively cultivated them. Sent seeds to friends. This is the same guy who smuggled rice out of Italy and revolutionized American agriculture. And he thought pawpaws were worth his time. George Washington loved them chilled. Apparently refrigerated pawpaw was his thing. Which makes sense because have you ever had cold custard on a hot day? Exactly. By the early 1900s, pawpaws were everywhere in American rural culture. Kids ate them on the way to school. Families picked them in the forest. There was even a popular song, Way Down Yonder in the Pawpaw Patch, that everybody knew. But here's where things get weird. By the 1950s, vanished. Erased from American food consciousness like they never existed. What happened? The refrigerated rail car happened. Industrialized agriculture happened. The entire concept of year-round produce from anywhere in the world happened. See, pawpaws have what you might call a catastrophic design flaw from a commercial perspective. They're too good. They ripen too perfectly. They become too delicious. Here's the problem. A pawpaw ripens fast. You pick it off the tree and you've got maybe 2 to 3 days before it goes from perfect tropical custard to science experiment in your fruit bowl. They last 48 hours. If you're lucky, refrigeration helps. You can get up to a week, maybe 10 days if you're careful. But that's still nothing compared to apples, which can sit in controlled atmosphere storage for months. An apple you eat in April was probably picked in October and has been living in a high-tech coma. Pawpaws won't do that. They refuse to participate in modern logistics. Shipping them is a nightmare. They bruise if you look at them wrong. The skin is thin. The flesh is soft. By the time a pawpaw makes it from a farm to a distribution center, to a truck to a store to your shopping cart, it's pudding. Delicious pudding, but not something you can sell for $3.99 a pound. And grocery stores? They're not set up for fruit that requires handling like it's a Fabergé egg filled with custard. The entire modern food system is built on a few key principles: durability, consistent appearance, long shelf life, year-round availability. The pawpaw violates every single one of these commandments. But that's not even the full story. The pawpaw has another problem. It doesn't grow like modern agriculture needs it to grow. Apple trees. You can plant them in neat rows, prune them to identical shapes, harvest them with machines, process thousands of pounds per hour. Industrial farming loves apples. They're the teacher's pet of the fruit world. Pawpaws? They're the weird art kid who sits alone at lunch. The trees are understory trees. They grow in the shade of larger trees in natural forests. They don't like full sun when they're young. You can't just clear a field and plant 500 pawpaw trees and expect them to thrive. They're not wired for monoculture. They also have this fun quirk where they're self-incompatible. A pawpaw tree can't pollinate itself. You need at least 2 genetically different trees. And even then, remember those flies and beetles? You're dependent on insects that are attracted to rotting meat smells to pollinate your crop. Good luck optimizing that system. The trees can take 4 to 8 years before they start producing fruit. Compare that to apples, which can be grafted onto dwarf rootstock and produce in 2 to 3 years. And here's the really fun part. Pawpaws grown from seed, they're genetic wildcards. Every seed produces a unique tree with unique fruit. Some are amazing. Some taste like sad bananas. Some are stringy and weird. You can't guarantee consistency without cloning trees through grafting, which is possible but expensive and time-consuming. So let's recap. You've got a fruit that rots in 48 hours, bruises if you breathe on it, grows on trees that take forever to produce, can't pollinate themselves, need shade to start, and produce wildly inconsistent results. From a business perspective, the pawpaw is a disaster. It's the exact opposite of what modern agriculture wants. But here's the thing. None of those problems existed when food was local. When communities harvested wild pawpaws from nearby forests, shelf life didn't matter. You picked them today, ate them tomorrow. When families knew which trees produced the best fruit and would visit those specific trees every September, consistency wasn't an issue. The pawpaw worked perfectly in a local, seasonal food system. It failed catastrophically when we tried to force it into an industrial one. And so America forgot. Within 2 generations, the pawpaw went from ubiquitous to unknown. People who grew up eating them in the 1920s had grandchildren in the 1970s who'd never heard of them. It's one of the weirdest cultural amnesia events in American food history. We didn't stop eating pawpaws because they were bad. We stopped because our entire food system reorganized around things that could survive being shipped from Chile. But recently, things are changing. Slowly, weirdly, but changing. There's a growing subculture of pawpaw enthusiasts, backyard orchardists, foragers, people who've tasted one and become instant evangelists. Pawpaw festivals are popping up across the Midwest and South. The biggest one in Ohio draws thousands of people every September. Universities are researching them. Kentucky State University has an entire pawpaw research program. They're developing cultivars with better shelf life, more consistent flavor, larger fruit. Varieties like Shenandoah, Susquehanna, and Potomac are specifically bred to be more commercially viable. Some farmers' markets are starting to carry them, usually for a hefty price, because scarcity and handling difficulty drive costs up. You might pay $6 to $8 a pound if you can find them. And chefs, they're obsessed. High-end restaurants are putting pawpaw on menus. Pawpaw ice cream, pawpaw cocktails, pawpaw this, pawpaw that. It's become this exotic local ingredient, which is hilarious because it's literally growing wild in the woods behind the restaurant. But here's the reality check. The pawpaw will probably never be in every grocery store. It's fundamentally incompatible with industrial food systems. Maybe the pawpaw is a reminder that not everything needs to be optimized, shipped, and sold year-round. Maybe some things are meant to be seasonal, local, and special. You've got a few options. Option 1 is find someone who's selling them. Farmers markets in pawpaw growing regions, usually late August through September. Call ahead. They sell out fast. Option 2 is forage for them. Pawpaws grow wild across the eastern United States. Get a foraging guide. Learn to identify the trees and go for a walk in the woods in September. The fruit falls when it's ripe. Look on the ground under pawpaw trees. Just make sure you're on public land or have permission. Option 3. Plant a tree. They're available from specialty nurseries. You'll need at least 2 different varieties for pollination. They'll take years to fruit, and they're fussy about growing conditions. But imagine walking into your backyard in September and picking fresh pawpaws. That's worth the wait. The pawpaw is proof that America had its own superfruit all along. We just built a food system that couldn't handle it. And now we're slowly, awkwardly remembering what we lost. So the next time you're standing in that produce aisle, looking at those boring apples from who knows where, remember? There's a fruit out there with 3 times the nutrition, incredible flavor, and a history as American as apple pie. You just can't buy it at the grocery store. And honestly, that might be exactly why it's worth seeking out. Thanks for watching. Now go find a pawpaw.